The path to improving zero trust and cybersecurity resilience among state and local governments can present many challenges, but several support systems are emerging to help security and IT leaders build holistic security strategies. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to talk to us today about that support are Adam Ford, Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Illinois, working in the Department of Innovation and Technology, and Peter Romness, Cybersecurity Principal, CISO's Advisory Office at Cisco. And gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And let me start with you, Adam. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, as you know, recently released an update to its infrastructure resilience planning framework. I'm interested to hear, how are state CISOs like yourself viewing CISA's broader zero trust recommendations, and what objectives in this guidance align with what state and local governments are really trying to accomplish with their cybersecurity priorities?
Sure. Yeah, great question. The guidance from CISA, I think, is largely a call to action for states. For state CISOs, moving to zero trust is an imperative as we modernize our security practices. And it requires us all to do a lot of inward looking and outward looking. We have to not just understand threats, not just understand nation state actors and the things that can really get people interested in cybersecurity, but really get into the meat of our own organizations, understand where our data is, what our systems are, what are the residents, or who are the residents that our agency applications are serving, who are our users. So I believe it's really driving here in Illinois, and I know from my peers across the country, a lot of introspection and drive towards modernization. Zero trust means that we can't rely on what we felt comfortable with in the past. It means we can't make assumptions that things are secure without having adequate verification and monitoring that they are in fact secure. This also, I think, has driven a lot of states to look at modernizing legacy systems that may not have the kind of feature sets that are required to really implement a zero trust architecture going forward. There is significant demands put upon systems to be able to consider disparate points of data, like location of the user. Is the user commonly on at this time of the day in an interaction? And legacy modes of authentication and of security around applications simply aren't up to the task. So I think we're kind of championing modernization, as well as really looking around and taking a great inventory of the systems around us and how are we going to move forward more securely.
Appreciate that. Peter, I'm interested in your impressions. Though CISA's guidance initially was aimed at federal agencies, how are you seeing that guidance aligning with state and local governments and more urgent cybersecurity priorities?
Well, it's interesting because both CISA guidance and NIST guidance, in many cases, were aligned at critical infrastructure, but we're seeing a lot of organizations use it. And in particular, this CISA guidance really kind of helps you, it gives a good example of how to move your program along. It talks about laying a foundation, identifying what's critical, doing a risk assessment, developing an action plan, and then implementing and evaluating, and then starting over again. And that can be used not just for critical infrastructure, but for almost anything. And for zero trust in particular, federal government has some mandates in place for zero trust, but the state and local are looking at that also. And commercial is. Now, almost everybody is sick of the term zero trust, but I think it's important to say that the concepts that it involves are critical to having a resilient infrastructure or a resilient organization. The idea that you're not putting protection around your organization anymore, you're putting your protection around every asset in your organization and making that critical, yes, I trust you decision before allowing access to any of those, I think is a really good way of thinking about things, whether you call it zero trust or not.
Well, Adam, back to you. The funding of modernization initiatives at the state and local government level has, continued to be an ongoing challenge year in and year out. States, it appears, should be getting some fresh support from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, which established a $1 billion state and local cybersecurity grant program. But from where you're sitting, is that helping with your efforts? And what other grant funding programs are available to state and local organizations to help address their cybersecurity challenges?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good start. $1 billion sounds like a lot of money spread out amongst all the units of government in the nation over 4 years. I think it's seed capital for us as state CISOs and as local government to invest in ways to demonstrate the value of collaborative efforts to defend the critical infrastructure that is local government and state governments. Within the state of Illinois, and I know in many other states, we are looking at this funding as a way to not just upskill things at the state level, but also to help our local government peers at cities and counties, municipal water departments, and public utilities through building out collaboration. I do think there probably is calls for larger, more continuous funding to start to address the modernization gap at the local level and at state levels. As I mentioned, I think this is kind of like, how do we get started demonstrating the value of this investment back into our local governments? And then, from there, I really see that there are other grant opportunities out there for specific sectors. Education sector oftentimes has grants coming down in terms of E-rate funding and things like that. There is FEMA grants that come out. There's not a lot of direct targeted grants for local government, but I think that this is really our opportunity to demonstrate the value of why these investments are there, and to justify why further grants in the future will provide this additional benefit to local government. On top of that, a lot of cybersecurity things that I think we'll see out of these practices that are promoted from the state and local cybersecurity grant program will be training up our local government peers and our state government peers that some of these things that we need to do don't cost that much money. We do need to throw money at this problem, but not only do we need to throw money at this problem, we need to throw time, resources, and continuous effort at it. So, I think it's a good start. Yeah.
And what was that, Peter? And creativity, right?
And creativity. And I might add, Adam mentioned that you could almost see it as seed funding. But that's really important, because that's helping our state and local leaders realize the importance and giving them the impetus to get started. Like he said, more funding is likely coming. The recent Inflation Reduction Act had money that could possibly be tapped for this also. So there are a lot of people can help our state and local leaders find funding and apply for it. And so I recommend you get help if you're looking to get some of these grants.
Great point. Adam, I'm curious, can you share some examples of where Illinois or maybe other state and local governments you are watching have successfully implemented parts of the zero trust architecture or specific zero trust practices to improve their cybersecurity? And at the same time, what are you seeing as the top challenges you and your peers are still encountering?
Yeah, I think here in Illinois, we've worked really hard to adopt a number of cybersecurity or zero trust architecture principles into our cybersecurity practice. Most importantly, we have taken a very serious inventory of our endpoints. We've tried to look at the applications that are running within our environment and work on getting better master data about our users. And we've implemented solutions in the state of Illinois to improve residents' ability to defend themselves when using state systems through a modernization of a single sign-on solution for applications at the state level. Much of this grew out of the pandemic, when it was kind of mandatory on states to take a hard look at how we're securing resident interactions with systems, as well as our internal applications of systems. So we've seen a lot of benefit from it. It's obviously a journey. And we have seen, that improved. Oftentimes the zero trust inventory that you have to do, the soul searching that you have to do to figure out what your systems are, who your users are, has outsized benefits to the rest of the organization. It really does point out those areas where we have a murky view of the operational picture, or perhaps there are too many variables in this equation, and simplification and modernization are called for. And oftentimes what we found as we implement these solutions is that they actually add user experience benefits in addition to security. As we simplify and streamline our operations so that we can interrogate requests for data more effectively, we are also streamlining those requests to make them simpler for the user. The challenge remains, I think, for local government, just getting started is a big challenge. I think for state government, the challenge is that we aren't starting a new business here with no data. We have a very large brownfield environment in the state of Illinois and in all states where systems operating, or effectively agency applications, have been in use for decades. Oftentimes the programs are on their multiple iteration of that specific system. And so a lot of that legacy knowledge has been lost. There's a lot of real investigation required, and just the whole scope of the problem is, I think, the biggest challenge. It can feel overwhelming trying to get an entire landscape picture of your environment. And ultimately, we in Illinois, and I think in many other states, it's just a problem of getting started, kind of like the analogy of eating a whale or eating an elephant, whatever your preference is.
Very interesting point. Peter, what additional zero trust efforts at the state and local level have caught your attention? And also, what challenges are you still seeing from your perspective?
Well, I'll start with the challenge first. The challenge that I've seen in much of state and local is just getting started and realizing the benefits. And I think realizing the benefits will help move things along. And that's, I think, a really important thing and so an example that I have is the city of Albuquerque, or the county that Albuquerque is in, and their water system, fresh water system. They recently applied zero trust and other principles in order to protect their operational technology network. So this is not an IT network, it's not an OT network, it's a combination of the two. And by using zero trust, it allows you to when you put protection around all of your assets, it allows you to combine the two networks and gain the benefits that you can get from that. You know, the ability for the people that work there in order to log in through the IT system and be able to see what's going on in their OT system is a huge advantage. And the ability to see what's going on and to react to any type of issue in both of those systems really helps make for much more secure, as well as a much more efficient ability to see when new leaks occur, when a valve should be open, that type of thing. So that's a great case study, and it's where they've really applied some of the zero trust technologies and zero trust way of looking at things to their to solving their problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, lastly, and this is a question for both of you, zero trust obviously is part of a larger equation to ensure security resilience. I'm interested to hear, how are you seeing state and local government organizations combine zero trust with other practices, like sharing threat intelligence, for instance, to improve their overall security resilience? Adam, maybe you could take that one first.
Sure. Yeah, I think when we talk about zero trust, a lot of times we're thinking of this as the adversarial nature of threat actors attacking systems. But I think when we apply zero trust principles and start to take the inventory, start to take stock of our environment, we also start to really focus in on those resiliency issues. Ransomware preparedness has brought back to the forefront the lost art of backup and recovery. And I think that those are areas where we have focused, and I think local government as well has focused on, are you sure that you really can recover your system in the event of even a hardware loss? Many incidents, I mean, just recently, the FAA issue was not caused by malicious activity, but instead just due to system problems. And we see that very much. I think it's magnified at the state and the local level, where we do have a fleet of older systems. The backup and restoration could possibly have been taken for granted. And sometimes we really do, as we look at zero trust and resiliency, have to look at, like, are we really sure that a system running on a single computer from 2012 is mission critical and that we're treating it appropriately as such? We're really looking at eliminating single points of failure and ensuring that our backup and restoration processes are adequate to meet not just the cyber threat, but also just to meet day-to-day information security issues related to availability due to failure.
Some great points there. Peter, your additional thoughts?
Yeah, just building off what Adam said, you know, the whole idea of using the zero trust principles kind of helps with that problem that Adam said about there's a machine from 2000, maybe 2001, and it's hypercritical to your organization. You have to have it. Well, zero trust allows you to isolate that machine so that it can't do as much harm if something goes wrong. And so, you know, this whole push towards zero trust is making everybody look at their environment and say, okay, we need to modernize, but sometimes we have to make some hard risk-based decisions about what do we replace and not. So, you know, just an advantage of zero trust thinking is that it allows you to, you know, make these granular decisions about, you know, what can hurt you and what can't. And so I think that's a huge part of it. And by having that control of your environment, it allows you to be more resilient, right? So if you see something that's attacking a certain endpoint, you can isolate that endpoint, hopefully in an automated fashion, and not have to, you know, have an operator doing everything all the time. And so that really the ability to see, the ability to control, and the ability to respond really helps you with your resilience. And you know, whether you call it zero trust or not, the principles are there. And if you use them, I think it will really protect your organization.
Well, Adam Ford with the state of Illinois and Peter Romness at Cisco, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights about improving security resilience. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.